Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm taking you to the Mega Master League, where we're going to take a look at a trainer having some very strong results with a very unexpected Mega Pokemon, and that is Mega Heracross. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Polybias, so many thanks for the battle submission. One thing that makes Mega Heracross a really interesting pick is its absolutely monster attack stat. This is a Pokemon that can win Charge Attack priority over Crowned Zacian, and hits a lot harder than people expect. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, Mega Heracross off to a very strong start as it leads into Mega Gyarados. Gyarados does not switch out, and look at the counters! Gyarados getting deleted as it immediately fires off the Aqua Tail. It appears the opponent does not have a strong counter swap here. They're going to stay in, and there's the switch out, but they catch the upper hand onto Zacian. Zacian's still going to take big damage from the upper hand, and Heracross is more than happy to stay in. Heracross is going to make it to upper hand number 2, and this will threaten a knockout unless the opponent puts up the shield. They put up the shield, upper hand, gets the defense drop, and that forces Zacian into firing off energy. Zacian goes for the close combat. It is their cheapest charge attack, but by going for the close combat, now they've lowered their defense, and it's going to be an easier farm down for Palkia. Palkia will shield up the close combat, get the full farm down, exiting with a decent amount of energy. Back in comes the Gyarados. The Gyarados has already taken significant damage from those counters leading into the Heracross. Crunch will land. That's going to be getting Palkia into the red HP. Palkia will look to take the knockout with the Spatial Rend. Down goes Gyarados. In the back is Dawn Wings Necrozma, and this could get a little bit tricky, because the final Pokemon in the back is going to be Lugia. Lugia really does not want to eat a Moongeist Beam. Lugia farming up a ton of energy. Tough call to make. Lugia puts up the shield. Is it the bait? Is it the nuke? It's the nuke. Opponent full sends the Moongeist, and that is a massive swing for the Lugia. Lugia now gets to connect with the Aeroblast. Aeroblast devastating damage. Dawn Wings is barely able to hang on and make a last second charge attack, but it is just going to be the Dark Pulse. Dragon Tail picks up the knockout, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, we see a pretty familiar matchup, Heracross into Zacian. Last time the opponent safe switched Zacian into the Heracross, and honestly, I don't think they liked how that went. Heracross is going to farm up to an Earthquake, but only going to throw the upper hand. Upper hand does get shielded by the opponent, and they are now at the back-to-back close combat. Behemoth does have to be respected. Opponent going to go for the close combat, and it's actually going to be a simultaneous safe switch, Lugia into the Latios. That's so unfortunate for the opponent as they are completely walled. Latios will go for the Luster Purge, although even though they are technically walled, that still did a ton of damage. Latios going to cap tie here, Aura Sphere to this Aeroblast. Aura Sphere not going to be enough to take the knockout, and now Lugia is going to hit hard with the Aeroblast. Aeroblast does get no shielded, down goes Latios. Back in comes the Zacian, quick switch back into Heracross. Heracross will look to take the knockout with upper hand. Upper hand gets shielded by the opponent. They're going to be under tapping. Heracross more than happy to let this go. Behemoth Blade comes through, down goes Heracross, and in comes Palkia. Palkia can't really afford to DB down, will probably have to throw an Aqua Tail. Will the opponent be able to catch it? What are they going to have in the back? They go for the close combat. It's their own Palkia in the back, and this game is over. Even if they tried for a catch, the Palkia always would have been behind on energy, so there just wasn't a way for them to win this game. Back in comes the Zacian. They just stop tapping, so Palkia is going to fully triple resist and Dragon Breath down that Zacian and secure the win. Hopping into the next match, Heracross into Zacian once again. There's not a ton of variety in the Mega Master League as far as the supporting cast. It's usually always going to be a Mega and then Palkia Zacian. It's one of the reasons why I do think this team is pretty cool, because this team does not have Zacian. Upper hand does get shielded. Unfortunately for the Heracross, no debuff comes through. Does Heracross decide to respect Behemoth? Yes, they do. Zacian goes for the close combat. Zacian tries to close combat again, but they do not win that charge attack priority tie. Heracross takes the knockout. Zacian gets KO'd. In comes Palkia, and there's a quick switch to Lugia. Lugia is going to be answered with a Mega Gyarados, and this could get a little bit tricky. If Gyarados is able to either call a fly or successfully shield an Aeroblast, things could get difficult, and the Crunch debuffed. Only a 20% chance. That's going to make this more difficult, and the Aeroblast gets shielded. That is very bad. Gyarados is very, very spammy. Opponent does give a free Dragon Tail. Lugia going to let this go. This is going to be very tough, because the Heracross is probably in range where it gets knocked out by the Aqua Tail. In comes the Heracross. Heracross is going to be no shielding. Gyarados' Aqua Tail lands. Heracross barely hangs on. In comes Palkia. But this Gyarados, it just has an absolutely massive amount of energy. The decision to go for the Aeroblast ended up backfiring in a very big way. Palkia will put up the shield, but my goodness, this Gyarados is still very, very healthy. These Dragon Breaths adding up quite a bit, going for the Aqua Tail, needing Aqua Tail to be able to take this knockout. Aqua Tail into the Gyarados, does take the KO, unable to make the Spatial Rend, and unfortunately, this will be a loss. Tried to make it as close as possible, but having that much energy shielded, a whole Aeroblast worth of energy do nothing, unfortunately, did end up costing the game. Oh my goodness, what a lead in the next match. Mega Heracross into Dialga, and Dialga's staying in! What could they have in back that's worse than this? Heracross more than happy just to shield and probably just counter them all the way down. Dialga goes for the Iron Head, and look at the counters. Mega Heracross, oh my goodness. Out comes Primal Kyogre. Primal Kyogre going to be immediately met with the upper hand. Upper hand is going to land. There's the pivot into Palkia. In the back is Zacian. So the opponent was very, very weak to the Heracross. Zacian, even though it's a fairy steel type into a dragon, somehow never feels particularly comfortable in this matchup, especially due to the fact that there wasn't really any chip damage on this Palkia before they switched in, because even Primal Kyogre, with as high of an attack stat as it is, the waterfalls are still double resisted. So when they go for the close combat, it simply will not take the knockout, and now Palkia gets to start peeling away shields. Aqua Tail will be shielded by the opponent. Palkia, can it make one final Aqua Tail? Yes, it can. Palkia refusing to get farmed down, and this final Aqua Tail will force the final shield. In comes Heracross. Heracross's upper hand does get caught onto Kyogre, but the Kyogre is now going to be pretty low. Kyogre is actually now deep into the red HP, and out comes Lugia. Lugia going to be hit with a charge stack from Kyogre, insta-no shield. Kyogre goes for the Surf. That does do quite a lot of damage, but there's the full farm down from the Lugia. Lugia did click the Fly. Lugia with the no shield. Zacian goes for the Behemoth Blade, but it just is not enough. Lugia too bulky, able to hang on. Fly is going to connect, picking up the knockout, and taking the win. We've got a bit of variety from the opponent in the next match, as Mega Heracross leads into Kyurem White. Kyurem White with the Dragon Breath rework is going to be able to spam out Fusion Flares like it's nothing, but Heracross, due to its bug subtyping, absolutely has to respect this. Heracross would love a one-shield farm down. It's going to be close. Kyurem does not get there, and that is incredible for Heracross. In comes Primal Kyogre. Heracross probably going to go for the chip and dip. Upper hand is going to land, getting that defense drop. Out comes Lugia. Lugia going to be answered with the Zacian. This sets up an endgame where Kyogre is going to get stuck onto the Palkia. No baits here from the Lugia. Really trying to land some chip damage. Aeroblast is going to be no-shielded, but due to that steel subtyping, Aeroblast just is not a problem for the Zacian. Palkia going to take neutral from the Behemoth Blade, but we've seen this before. This is not a problem for the Lugia. Lugia just going to fire off this Aeroblast as soon as it gets there. Aeroblast into the Zacian is no-shielded. Quick switch to the Heracross, answered with Kyogre. The Kyogre does get the waterfall through, as Upper Hand will connect. Upper Hand does get the shield. Kyogre gets the farm down. Upper Hand did get the defense drop, though, and that is incredibly helpful, because now it's Palkia time. Palkia hits the field and can look for a full farm down. The instant no-shield. Kyogre goes for the Thunder. That is big damage, but these Dragon Breaths are adding up. Palkia gets that full farm down, exiting with the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Back in comes Zacian, but the damage has been done. Zacian just simply too low. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Mega Heracross, oh, that's a very bad lead, leading into Primal Groudon. Primal Groudon will be able to spam out Fire Punches, and the opponent actually ends up throwing on alignment. I honestly think that's a pretty solid play from the opponent, because if they tried to throw 5 in the move for good timing, then Heracross could have tried to predict it and maybe get a catch onto one of the back Pokemon. Heracross's upper hand does get the shield, and that's the exact catch I was talking about. Opponent this time does not undertap, and they end up letting a catch happen onto Lugia. Lugia going to be answered with the Zacian, as always it seems. But with Lugia being outside of Behemoth Blade range, this is honestly not that terrible. Lugia, no shields, Behemoth is going to land. Lugia opting for the Aeroblast. This Aeroblast will be able to lock in some pretty nice chip damage. The Aeroblast will connect, switch timer not yet up. Lugia cannot save itself, and now in comes Heracross. Heracross is going to be winning charge attack priority, that high attack stat coming in clutch so many times. Upper hand will take the knockout, and back in comes Groudon. Groudon answered with a Palkia. Groudon does have enough for a Precipice Blades. The shield comes up at the absolute last second. Oh, that was a bit of a risk. Palkia now at the back-to-back Aqua Tails. Opponent has to decide, is it really worth preserving the Groudon? They say no. In the back, they have Kyurem White. farming up a ton of energy on the Palkia, opting for the Aqua Tail bait. This could be the game if the opponent decides to call it. The opponent puts up the shield. Palkia gets there with the bait, getting to the Spatial Rend. Kyurem does not get the farm down. Instead, they get KO'd. That game looked very scary on lock-in, but somehow is going to end in a win. Speaking of scary games, leading a Mega Heracross into Mega Latios is absolutely not where you want to be. But a well-timed catch onto Lugia could be a good place to start as Latios connects with the Luster Purge. Unfortunately, Luster Purge did get the defense drop, and now out comes Zamazenta. Zamazenta, these Ice Fangs will be hitting for some pretty nice damage. Fly will hit for neutral, but unfortunately, Zamazenta is very bulky. Zamazenta decides to throw energy pretty early, so Lugia is pretty happy just letting itself get knocked out, and now, at the very least, Heracross can get back on the field. Heracross did store quite a bit of energy. Heracross going to be massively over-farming, and it looks like playing to the CMP tie. Heracross doing a very nice job of consistently getting the maximum over-farm. Back in comes the Latios, and honestly, even an Aura Sphere would threaten the Heracross at this point. Heracross just wants to lock in some damage, going for the upper hand. Upper hand does get the debuff. In the back is Palkia, answered with Zacian. But as we've established, despite the typing, this matchup is pretty okay for the Palkia. Palkia just has incredibly absurd Aqua Tail pacing, and the Palkia will always be just outside of close combat range until a bunch more Metal Claws land. This Zacian is actually on Play Rough. Oh my goodness. I did get Play Roughed in the Mega Ampharos video a few days back. It looks like this Zacian is also on that Play Rough tech. So very, very good that Palkia decided to put up the shield. Palkia trying to get to the Aqua Tail, but unfortunately, that looks like it was a charge stack priority tie. That's a little bit tough. Zacian goes for the Behemoth Blade, but now the opponent may look to just let this go and try and win the game with the Latios. And they do. In comes the Latios, quick switch to Heracross. Heracross trying to get to the move. The counters added up enough that it forced the opponent to throw the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere takes the knockout. In comes Palkia, and they get another Aura Sphere. Is this going to be enough damage? Aura Sphere is a very efficient attack, but Palkia hangs on, gets the farm down, and somehow this team escapes with a win. Back in very familiar territory in the next match with Heracross and Zacian. Heracross gonna look to farm up, try and go for a charge attack priority tie on the Behemoth Blade. Upper hand will not knock out, but it still gets a shield from the Zacian. And we've seen time and time again, Zacian's not winning charge attack priority. Shield comes up, there's the Behemoth Blade from the Zacian. An opponent is now gonna switch out and send in Palkia. Palkia gonna be chipped down with the upper hand, no shield comes out, and there's a switch into Lugia. Lugia will be a very effective damage sponge. Palkia, we know how fast it can get the charge attacks, but Lugia is a rare Pokemon that can actually absorb that energy. Palkia will not quit one final charge attack before the Dragon Tail takes the knockout. It is just going to be the Aqua Tail. Now Palkia exits up a ton of energy. Will the opponent bring back in the Zacian? No, they're going to be bringing out Mega Gyarados as their final Pokemon. Gyarados going to be chipped with a Fly. Lugia, can it make the Aeroblast? It's going to be close, does get the Aeroblast. Will the opponent decide to put up the final shield? Aeroblast is going to connect. That's big damage. Lugia, can it get the farm down? No, it cannot. It's Zacian that gets the farm down, but in comes Palkia. Opponent able to save the Gyarados and send in Zacian. Gyarados is on 1 HP. It has so much energy. The shield comes up from Palkia as this is going to be a charge attack priority tie. Aqua Tail launched at the Zacian will get the shield, but unfortunately for the Zacian, they're just getting outpaced. Palkia will get to the Aqua Tail. The question is, can Gyarados survive a Dragon Breath? I think the answer is no. Oh, the catch! Not gonna go for the one Dragon Breath con, instead going for the catch. It's a return Mega Gyarados. That would have been terrifying damage, but it does not land, and that's game over. Hopping into the final match, hitting Heracross into Kyogre. Opponent actually switches out of a winning lead as they send in Primarina. So this very well could be Primal Kyogre Double Fairy, and the reason why they're switching out is they feel they have two better responses in the back. Primarina, it just really doesn't have the stats. It's hard carried by its typing, so it's gonna take a ton of damage from these flies. The shield does come up for Lugia. Lugia really wants to make a play for switch advantage because with switch advantage, that means Palkia is going to be shutting down Kyogre. Fly is going to connect, and Primarina is about to get Dragon Tail down. Oh, that is so unfortunate for Primarina. Back in comes Primal Kyogre. Lugia not messing around. This time just going to full send the Aeroblast. Aeroblast shielded up by the Kyogre. The boost comes out from the Aeroblast, but unfortunately, boosted Dragon Tails will not do much. In comes Palkia. In the back is Zacian. And we see it is Double Fairy. I'm a bit surprised that they ended up switching out, just because Zacian doesn't have the greatest matchup ever into Heracross. Heracross, Behemoth Blade would do a ton of damage, so Heracross is forced to put up a shield. Heracross should now be able to overfarm quite massively. Heracross will go for the upper hand, and this upper hand, I mean, they basically have no HP left. Upper hand is going to be no shielded. Back in comes Kyogre. Kyogre going to be chipped away with this upper hand. It looks like Heracross should be able to hang on to make another upper hand as well. Switch timer will be up soon. Upper hand is reached, and that's going to force the opponent to go for the cap tie. Surf will take the knockout. The important thing is that Palkia is still very healthy. So unless it's like a return Kyogre or something like that, Thunder will not do it. Opponent does have Thunder. Palkia able to hang on. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, big thanks to Polybius for sending in this footage. Mega Heracross is honestly a Pokemon that I wish that I could have tried. Even with the Mega Heracross raid day we had at some point, I'm unfortunately still about 100 XL short, and I don't have a hundo. So this is not a Pokemon that I would ever get to try, and those are honestly some of my favorite shoutcasts, is getting to see Pokemon in a league that I personally just do not have access to. I think Mega Heracross, while it is definitely a tier below the most used Megas, I'm talking like Latios, Groudon, Gyarados, Metagross, kind of like those big four, I do think there is quite a lot of value for Mega Heracross, specifically due to the fact that it has some pretty solid neutral play into both Palkia and Zacian. And with those two being the most common support Pokemon of this format, it feels a little bit of like a Mega Latios to me, where if you have play into both sides of that core, then you're probably going to have a role. I think Mega Heracross, it's not going to get used a ton just because it's very difficult to obtain XLs for if you don't live in a region where Heracross just naturally spawns, as we haven't had a raid day for it in quite some time, and I don't think it's in like research or anything like that. So acquiring Heracross XLs is a little bit region dependent, but I do think it's a surprisingly solid, I would say like B tier Mega Pokemon for this format. Definitely a Pokemon that people can climb with. I did get to watch a few streamers have like multiple hundreds of points climbed in the Mega Master League with Mega Heracross. Part of it was people just didn't really know what it was or what it had, so the counts were a little bit of an unknown, especially with the counter nerf. And with upper hand, a lot of people aren't super familiar with Heracross counts. They don't know how high of an attack stat Heracross is, so they end up trying to CMP tie it, and it ends up biting them in a pretty big way. But overall, these are some very fun battles, so many thanks for sending them in. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. Thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.